This is Deconstructing Dating, a podcast where we, two matchmaker cousins and best friends, determine whether common courtship concepts are dating myths or dating truths. I'm Tiana.
And I'm Marnie. We'll settle all the age-old questions. Do you wait 3 days after a date to contact someone? Can you have too many deal breakers? Can you have sex on the first date?
Let's find out together and debunk the myths of courtship.
Because dating shouldn't be this hard.
So, Marn, you see all these fairy tale and these movie things where, it's like, oh my gosh, I always think of like The Holiday. I meet somebody who's across the world and then we fall madly in love and I'm going to move for them. I've always thought I would do it. Like if I was in that situation, I would do it. But we have so many times where people are afraid to date somebody long distance. What?
Tiana, we have clients that are afraid to date someone that live a half an hour away. What are you talking about long distance? Yeah. I mean, it is crazy. How many times have we found matches for clients and we've given them an address or either they have asked us where they live and they say, oh, that's like a 35-minute drive. That's just crazy to me. Is any distance too far, Tiana? Like
not
seriously.
When you're intentionally looking for that person. But but it happens all the time. And, it can go both ways. So sometimes people say they're open to it, but when the rubber hits the road, they just completely back out. Do you think, though, in a lot of these cases that that's just an excuse? It was kind of like, oh, my gosh, well, I was looking for somebody, but now that I found them, that's the easiest excuse to pull out of actually moving forward with this thing.
It could be an excuse. It also could just be actual ignorance because it has to be ignorant to think that you're going to meet somebody. If you really want to meet somebody and you're looking for a partner, you would have to be ignorant to think that it's going to come to you in your home. You're going to have to get up, get out of your house and go out. And maybe you're going to have to drive 30 minutes. Maybe, and this is craziness, I know, but maybe you're going to meet somebody who lives in another state. And that's your person. You're not going to date them?
Yeah.
You should.
I would go anywhere. For the right person. I would literally go anywhere. But I do think that this falls in line with some of the things that we talk about where people are looking for a way out, looking for an excuse. And that's a very easy one. Now, I do think it takes a certain type of mentality, maturity, emotional strength, all of those things. If you're going to have a long distance relationship where you're going to be apart for a while,
you have to, first of all, both need to have secure attachment style because that is not an easy thing to negotiate or navigate. You both have to be very secure in the relationship and very mature. But there have millions of couples that make it work every single day.
Yeah. And then there's we've heard this before actually with somebody else recently about the trust factor. Well, I think that in a long distance relationship, the trust factor is a little bit exacerbated. But even if you had somebody in the same building or the building around the corner that you were dating, they can still fuck around if they want to. So, I mean, the trust factor is the trust factor.
Correct. I don't need to leave town for my husband to have an affair. Exactly. Yeah. When I was working with clients in marriage and family therapy that had long distance relationships, what was the common complaint to me was not so much the trust factor, but just the one that's at the home base, whether it's the woman or the man. I actually had clients where the woman was the one that traveled and he stayed home and took care of kids and everything else. But the one that's dealing with like the home life, they feel kind of abandoned, kind of forgotten. And and that's a difficult balance for their partner who's also out there working their ass off all day long, right? They're away from home, they're working, but they also need to make their spouse feel like they're still part of the solution. It's difficult.
And that's why no matter if you're in the initial courtship of dating or you're long-term married, you've got to stay aligned. You've got to communicate. You've got to do that because that reminds me of my business days when I traveled all the time and I was on the road, 4 or 5 nights a week.
Gone.
Always gone with a whole group of people that were in the same boats. And I saw the marriages that worked, and it's because they made a commitment, they stuck to it, they had their scheduled time check-ins, they made it a priority, those kind of things. I think that would also work in courtship. I mean, actually, when you started dating your husband, didn't he leave for an international trip like within 3 weeks of you dating?
Yeah, 3 weeks after we left, he had planned a trip to take his son to Israel for his bat mitzvah. And he was gone for almost a month. And he actually set an alarm on his clock or whatever to call me every single morning, Arizona time against Israel time. So that was somebody 3 weeks into the relationship. Every single day, my phone rang, even though I knew it was the middle of the night in Israel.
Yeah.
He made it work. He made it work.
That would have been a very easy time for both of you to bail. But you saw the pot of gold. I mean, you were just a couple weeks in.
We actually got closer during that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not distracted, right?
No. And we missed each other.
I think that's actually one of the beauties of long distance relationship is it's so intentional. When you make time to talk or you make time to see each other, it's very intentional. It's not just like, oh, let's just go see a movie or you're filling time. It's actual intentional time. So I think that's a great point. It can make your bond stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just got to have the right mindset. But it can
work.
The
right person.
And the right person. And the right people.
People. That's right.
People, yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We are here with our new friend, Ray Delgado. Ray, we are so excited to have you here today. I understand you're starting a new podcast. We'd love to hear a little bit about what you're developing.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Tell us.
It's great to be with you as well. I'm new to the podcast space myself. I'm developing a show called Sobriety Sucks, But You Need It. And it's really going to be sort of a more lighthearted look at the sobriety journey and struggles and, the challenges that those of us that are in that world and walking that path are facing. So we've got a lot of great ideas. It's in development and about to start. I think I'm going to be recording the first episodes this coming weekend. So we're going to be launching very soon. So you definitely have to stay tuned for that.
Well, good. Congratulations.
I am so excited for that. So I have been sober for 16 years.
Wow.
And I am constantly looking for recovery-related content. And it is very, very hard to find. So I am excited for your podcast, and I will make sure too that I tell all my friends that still work in treatment. And I ran treatment facilities for many, many years, but I think it's a wonderful resource as well for people that are coming out of treatment that are going to be brand new in recovery.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really excited that I didn't know that about you, so that's really great. Congratulations. Have to have you on the show as a guest sometime.
We're in.
We on our podcast, Ray, we are, the matchmaking cousins. We have our business, My Mindful Match. But the point of our podcast is each week we discuss a myth, a common myth about dating. And then we go through, we discuss it, and then we decide, is it fact or fiction? And we understand that there's outliers, right? There's always going to be those one-off cases, but we discuss what are these common myths. So I think it would be fun to do a sober dating one, something about sober dating at some point too, because I think it's crazy. But
I'll tell you what the myth is. The myth is that if you're sober, you have to date somebody that's sober. It's a bad idea.
Yeah. Oh, it could be a good idea. I mean, I'm not sure that...
It could be a good idea. Chris, we'll pocket
That's
that
a
one.
good one to debate.
Let's pocket that.
That's great. So today, Ray, we are going to be talking about the myth of... The conception is, this is what we believe, common knowledge to be believed is that long distance relationships don't work. And that's what we're discussing today. So we understand you have some experience with long distance relationships. We'd love to hear you jump off and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm here to confirm that they do not work and stay away and just jump
We don't even
out
need to
if
talk
somebody...
for the next 45 minutes.
No.
Yeah, we got it. That's the podcast.
Over.
Wrap it up.
Shut the door. No, I got tricked into one, and that was only because I had an experience where I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I met a guy that was in Los Angeles, and we dated, and I think that lasted about 3 months, and it was just too challenging.
Say more about getting tricked into it.
Okay, so this wasn't the one that I was tricked in. This is the experience that I had that made me realize I didn't ever want to do long distance relationships again. And that was all because it was, just like the financial piece of it, the not having somebody there all the time, and sort of, this was before a lot of FaceTime stuff was even out there. So really it was just like phone calls were not enough, basically. But so I'd had that experience, and then when I was in my sort of late 30s, I met a guy that was visiting his dad in San Francisco, and he lived in Florida. And he and I clicked as, like a hookup, and, hung out for the weekend. And then there was obviously something there and some chemistry. And I was like, I'm not going to go down that road. I've already done long distance relationships. And he's like, but I really like you. And if it works out, I would move to you.
Okay.
Oh, that's different then.
There was
So many questions already. So many
trick.
questions. Okay. How did you meet him if he was out there visiting for your dad
visiting
his dad?
He was visiting his dad, and he was at the same bar that I was at with friends. So he grew up in San Francisco. He knew people there. We saw each other at a bar, and it was one of those like across the rooms, instant chemistry type of thing. And we chatted. I gave him my number, and he called me like a day later, and we had our first date. And everything just clicked so quickly. It was really like swept off your feet type of situation. The way that our energies matched up, and so he was there. He wasn't working at the time, so he was in between jobs. And so he was just there kind of indefinitely. I think it was like over a week we spent a lot of time. And then it started to develop and get a little bit more serious. And then we were like, shit, what do we do? Because this is, a good connection, and there would be a no-brainer to continue to date if we lived in the same city. But for me, it was, again, I had that experience with long distance relationships, and I did not like Florida. I already knew that at the time. And
did he want to date? Did he want to try the long distance?
He definitely did. And the added bonus for him was that his dad was there in San Francisco. So, he could be closer to his dad that way. And he was just open to seeing where it would go. And if it was going to go somewhere, he was open to moving out to San Francisco to be with me.
And I always wonder when you meet somebody when they're on vacation, even though he was doing something like visiting his dad, like there's this chemistry factor of like the Love Island or the Love is Blind. You're put in these situations where it's just kind of that's all you do for this intense period. So in your normal life or your normal whatever it is, would you have developed such chemistry and feelings if it wasn't he had all the time in the world, you had a week together, you knew there was kind of a time crunch? Like, would it have progressed so fast even in the beginning?
You also knew it was coming to an end. Yeah, and also knowing that it's going to end, knowing that there's an end date, like knowing that you only have a week or a certain period of time, that also builds that excitement as well.
Yeah, you're right. We weren't in a normal circumstance at all because I think the trouble developed when he did get a job later, and I saw what he was like to be a working professional, which is a completely different person that was not appealing to me whatsoever. So, yeah, I was totally swept up in the fantasy of it all. My friend likes to say that I was dickmatized because
the power of the D. It always comes back.
Definitely.
Who hasn't been there? Everyone's been there once or twice in their lives.
I mean, I really fell head over heels for this guy right away, and I was
Did you ever
willing to
regret it,
explore
Ray?
Well, there's so much more to the story. So yes, there's definitely. I mean, I kind of like to live without regrets, and I did everything that sort of the next indicated step to see if the relationship would work out, and then it didn't eventually. But I did regret not listening to my inner voice at one point, and that was, we did progress. He came out to spend a vacation with me that I had planned with some other guy that had gotten on a plane and had a seizure and broke his back and was unable to go to, and that was another long distance thing, but that was just a casual boatmance reconnection type of thing.
Wow.
So, wait,
you are a busy man, Ray.
Back up.
You are a busy man, sir.
Yeah, back it up.
Oh.
Okay, so I got to know more about this. So first of all, let's start. Okay, so you have this week-long passionate, we know he's in town for his dad, and then how does that come to, where's the impasse there? And then you're like, no, I don't like long distance, and he's like, let's try it. Bring me back there. Tell me what happened. Definitely want to hear more about Airplane Guy. We'll get there.
Yeah. So this is in August. I remember when it was happened all in August, and Airplane Guy was supposed to come out for Folsom Street Festival, which happens at the end of September. And so Joe had already plans to head back to Florida at some point, and we wanted to see each other again. And probably sometime in August, Airplane Guy had his accident, and it was tragic. I mean, horrible. He's forever affected by that incident, because they broke his back trying to stabilize him while he was having a seizure. So he obviously had to cancel, and I had all this stuff booked in the most romantic place, Big Sur, 3 days. And Joe's like, I'm like, hey, I had this planned with this guy. Do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I'll come back for sure. And he had nothing to do. And so he came back, and, we really cemented the relationship at that point. And that's in September. And then by December, he was driving his car with, packed up with stuff to move to San Francisco and be with me. So he was in hospitality. And this is where
the story's getting good.
Yeah, this is where the whole I think I was duped maybe piece comes in. Because, he went to Cornell University, which is a very good school, obviously, and their hospitality program was one of the biggest. So he got here, and for 3 months, he was job searching and never had an interview and never really made any kind of footing, never went to networking events. I'm working, at my full-time job. And coming home and cooking. But nothing ever happened in his job search in San Francisco, which was a major hospitality hub.
Correct. You can find a job anywhere in San Francisco. Even while you're looking, you can find another job. Now, had you discussed finances? Were you supporting him? Did he come out with a little cash in his pocket? What's going on there? But he lived with you, right?
Yeah, he lived with me, and finances, he was really solid on that front. I mean, he'd had money in the bank. His house was already paid off in Florida. He made a lot of money for Florida in his previous job. So there was no need for, I would buy all the groceries and stuff, and I would kind of not make him pay towards rent or anything like that. But, it was...
What? So did it bother you that he didn't work?
No, because I knew he was looking every day. I could tell that he was trying to look, but I'm not sure how hard he looked, and I'm not sure if there was a real intention to stay. Because when a position opened up in Florida, he went out there and interviewed for the position and got it and accepted it without running that by me. And
And how much time had elapsed then? So that was 3 months?
That was in May.
Wow.
So
May.
From January to May, basically, he was looking for work. And so he lived with me for about 6 months. And then he moved back to Florida. And I had my critical moment of now I'm in love with the guy. Now I'm really sort of connected. And he's like, you can move to Florida with me. And I had a dream job at the time. And I was approaching my 40th birthday in November of that year. And I really was at a critical juncture in my life of just either I break up with him, because I'm not about long distance relationships. I won't do this dating thing from Florida to San Francisco, or I quit my job and I sell my things and I move to Florida. So I bet you can guess what I did.
Yeah, we got it.
We got it. So can I ask you, what age range ish was he?
He was about 4 or 5 years older than me, I think.
Okay, so many things here. So first of all, he's on a job hunt for 6 months in San Francisco and can't find anything, and then finds a glorious job back in Florida. So A, you feel a little tricked there.
Yeah.
B, especially he'd already made the commitment and you'd been pretty open with him about not wanting to go to Florida, right?
Yep. Not wanting a long distance relationship, and Florida was not my cup of tea at all.
And he packed up his shit like he was going to relocate to San Francisco.
Well,
let's not leave that detail out.
So he only packed up a car, which that was probably something I should have really thought more about. He wanted to keep his place intact in Florida just in case, he wasn't going to if the relationship didn't work out, say he got a job, but the relationship didn't work out, he'd have his place to go back to. So I understood that at the time. I actually think that that was a smart decision. That's something that I should have done myself, because I already knew I hated Florida and that I probably wasn't going to be happy there. But I decided at the time I wanted to be 100% in on the decision to be with him and move. So I was going to sell all of my stuff and relocate, and his company was paying for it. So, I basically sold all of my furnishings and had, maybe clothes and cooking stuff, kitchen stuff, and a few important things that I wanted to hold on to, and moved across country and lasted 6 months in Florida. So
Wow.
So he was out here with
Wow.
you for 6 months. He took a job before discussing it with you. You were under hairpin fire to make a decision. We're done, or I do the exact same and pack up everything and leave my dream job and my everything I've got and move there. So you did. And then what happened once you were there?
Okay, so there was a period in between, which I think was interesting,
Okay.
where I wasn't under immense pressure to leave right away and join him.
Okay.
He went back, and I went out there a couple of times to visit, to really see if Florida was for me or not. Like, maybe I was just prejudiced about Florida. Florida already had a shitty reputation for all the stupid stuff that people do there in the news,
Right.
et cetera. So I went out there a few times and then decided, okay, I think I can make this work. I really loved his place, and it was, his friends were okay, and I just decided, okay, I'm going to try it. And so I quit my job, and then I still had this 40th birthday looming. So basically, I lived off a severance at my job, and then dicked around California for 3 or 4 months, and then after my 40th birthday in November, moved a week later to Florida with, the moving company came November 1st and packed up all my stuff. And I was there by, I think, November 10th. So yeah, I definitely had gone back and forth, and that was more experience of long distance relationships that didn't work for me. I saw what he was like when he was working.
Yeah.
He basically would get up at 5:30 in the morning, be out the door by 6, come back around 8 p.m. because his job was in Miami and we lived in Fort Lauderdale, and there was a horrible commute, and he was just exhausted. I was dating a zombie. I mean, he was just exhausted all the time. And then the weekends were about his needs only. I got to basically do anything I wanted because I wasn't working. And so when the weekends rolled around, we had to spend like half a day doing the car wash and going to a nice brunch and making sure that he had 2 hours for a nap. And I hated it. And I was like, what am I doing? And I had this critical moment of like, am I going to do this or not? And that's when I was telling you earlier about not listening to my inner voice, which was telling me, do not leave California.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't for you. And
Yeah.
I still went ahead and did it. So the regret I have is not listening to that inner voice. And then I had to come back eventually and rebuy all the stuff that I fucking sold. And for 6 months of living there, I found out when I was there that he was married to a woman and was not telling me this information. And, everybody in Florida is like running a scam for immigration. So he had some lady trying to get her green card basically status, and all his friends were married for this purpose. And my big thing was like, don't lie to me in relationships, because that's a deal breaker for me.
Yes.
But her mail was coming to the house. And then he said that she was the previous tenant that lived at the house before him, which I
he
thought was
absolutely lied to you.
that's a lie, right? And then we
Yeah.
went to Costa Rica, and he posted a bunch of photos from it. And she was a Facebook friend that liked the photos. And I had never looked through his Facebook because I just don't give a shit.
Right.
But I'm
You
like,
shouldn't have to.
yeah, you're busted,
Yeah.
Here's the lie. So yeah, I left within 2 weeks of learning that information. I hated it, and I was having no luck finding a job there anyway. And the lie part of it all was just really fucked up.
Once the trust is broken,
Yeah.
there's nothing left, right? That should be the pillar of a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So when we go back to talking about long distance, and again, it's exacerbated, right? Because if you had started dating somebody, and even though you were together pretty intensely for a short time before, you probably wouldn't have moved in together when he first came out there.
Right.
And then, it was an automatic another move in because it's long distance and that's what you do. So
Right.
that timeline is completely on fast forward, right? Because that's just the option that you have. But when we talk about long distance dating and then you were back and forth out there, and you had learned that you didn't like it, but you were also learning things about the person that you didn't like. What made you compelled? Is there any factor in the fact that it was long distance that made you go for it when perhaps if he was, 20 minutes away, you wouldn't have? Maybe you wouldn't have done all of that.
It goes back,
there was a shield shielding him from who he really was.
It goes back to your question about regrets. And I didn't want to regret. Like, what if this was the love of my life? And I decided to end it because I didn't want to move to Florida. And so I decided
you would
I was
have always
do it.
wondered. Yeah, you would have always wondered,
The house was paid off.
Mistake?
I mean, it wasn't a huge expense. It wasn't a huge risk for me, except would I get a job? And what I really wasn't thinking was like, if this doesn't work out, then I'm going to have to come back and, with my tail between my legs, embarrassed, and then have to set up a new house again. And then that was like a huge deal and a huge expense that, I just didn't think about at the time. But I didn't want those regrets. And you're right. Everything was accelerated. We had such intense, great moments when he wasn't working. And then when he was, and I really saw that, if we had lived in the same city, I would have experienced that. And I could have probably just dealt with that because, okay, well, then I'll see you on the weekends. I'll see you 1 or 2 days a week, basically, and I'll still have my life with my friends. But when I moved to be with him and his life, I didn't know anybody.
I was going to say, it was probably very isolating.
It was so isolating. Yeah. And I just basically tried to make friends. I made a few friends, but, I'm just puppy dogging, waiting for this guy to get home. And, here's your two Cosmos that I would have for, drinking while waiting for him to come home. And this is where I developed my alcohol problem.
Sure.
It was, day drinking and being bored out of my ass in Florida. And there's not much to do there except drink and hang out.
What are you going to do? You have to, you had to find some form of entertainment. And, go ahead, Marn.
I'd call that a maladaptive coping skill.
Maladaptive, or there's that. Here's therapist hat. There's the psychoanalyst Marnie. There she
It's
is.
a maladaptive coping skill. That's what it is, right? That's what we do. We self-medicate with drugs and alcohol to try to heal whatever's broken inside of us when that's not the solution. Yeah. But that's what we do.
But we do. But in regards to the long distance dating, so when you start the long distance dating, I think that's where it has to be very clear. Like there has to be an alignment on what the path and the goals are, and a timeline also, and where you're going to get there. Because we looked up I looked up statistics. Marnie already knows stuff, but 60% of long distance relationships actually work. Now they've got a cutoff time of about 2.9 years, so it's kind of like you got to shit or get off the pot in 2.9 years. I think also age is a factor. I think,
I think maturity level, agree.
Distance in some regards is a factor. I think resources are a factor because there is a lot of expenses with travel and whatnot and things like that. But, we always say it all the time because in our matchmaking service, we often find people for our clients that possibly have two homes or live somewhere else. And we always ask the question of, are you open to relocating? And a lot of them say yes, but I don't know that they actually really feel that way. And if they don't feel that way, they shouldn't.
Yes.
They shouldn't say it.
We see that a lot. Yes.
Yep.
We actually see that a lot where they'll say that they're willing to relocate. And then when it comes down to it, and it's time to set up the date, they're not so sure.
Yeah.
So it's fine. Well, you just have to, you just have to state your motives right up front. And there has to be open and honest conversations about, everybody's intentions.
And there has to be a timeline as to what the expectation is of where we're going to eventually end up. And, there's this new big theory out there about living separately, right? There's all these people, and I think it's a largely part of an older demographic, perhaps people that have been married before or whatnot, that are now very settled in their lives, that they want a companion, they want a long-term partner, but they like the idea of keeping their own separate houses, and they like having somewhere to go and their own kind of space and whatnot. So this is like that on like a global scale, but you've got to have, what is the end game? Do you ultimately want to be together? So I've got a very good friend who, actually met somebody when he was vacationing in Costa Rica, and she's from Switzerland, and they are really making it work. But I can tell you something, there's a lot of pressure and there's an escalation in the timeline. Like at some point now we have to talk about visas. We have to talk about, is marriage on the table? We have to talk about, what does that mean when you're waiting for a green card and you can't go back and visit your family for a year until that green card is official? Right. So you have to make the space and the time to have those intimate relationships to make sure that you're truly aligned. Because I'll tell you what, I could get along with anybody for a couple of days, some better than others, but I could get along with anybody for a couple of days if I go back to my life. And so what is the disassociation when you go back to your life in these long distance relationships? How engaged do you stay?
Well, the other piece too is I bet the ones that are successful, I've seen long distance relationships that are healthy and successful. And I think that what makes it different is that there's a maturity level, but there's also a willingness. But prior to the relationship being long distance, there was a solid base. So that makes a big difference. It makes a difference if you meet somebody and they already live somewhere else, or if you've already got a chance to establish a strong foundation and then somebody has to move for whatever reason. That's different.
Two very different situations.
Which how do you establish a strong foundation then? Are you saying that like maybe you're dating somebody in your city and then one person has to relocate to another place, so then you now have a long distance relationship because you've already built a strong foundation? Or are you saying there's a way to do that when you're both already in different places, like in my situation?
No, I mean, it's very hard to build a strong foundation when you're already living in two different locations. Right. Can it happen? Yes. Has it happened? I'm sure. But it's not something that's easy, nor is it easy to maintain these relationships that happen when we vacation or we travel. Yeah. It's very, very common that we meet people in that setting, as we discussed earlier, because it's kind of like a fantasy. It's not real. That's not real life. It's also a maladaptive coping skill. Let's hook up while we're in a beautiful location, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what's more fun than that. However, like as you found out, it's not real life.
Yeah, so, but I'm trying to figure out for me if I'm like if my reticence about engaging in a long distance relationship again is just because I got burned so bad by this situation. Because I'm really shocked to hear that you all are saying that a lot of them can succeed. Where I come from the standpoint of like, don't even try it. Like, don't even go down that road. You can go find somebody in your own area. You'll develop a relationship in a normal situation where you both live in, your separate places, and you can go retreat when you need to. So why even try it, basically? And
so
that's how I've been feeling.
It sounds to me, though, like you're carrying some trauma from your past relationship, and it's not fair to the men that you'll meet moving forward, because until you work through that trauma and you're able to kind of conceptualize what happened there and make sense of it in your head, then you're going to kind of almost punish everyone you meet for something that somebody else did.
I'm only going to punish the ones that live somewhere else. Honestly.
Yeah, but actually, who you're punishing really, Ray, is yourself, because you might be.
I'm not doing it.
What if you're blocking yourself off, though, from the best person you've ever met in your entire life?
Who lives? I have to get on the flight to go see.
No. He needs to actually say he's going to relocate and mean it and do it. So there's that
and
too.
Do it. Well, and when you're describing your previous relationship too, there was already a lack of trust. I mean, you found out you were lied to, or that things were hidden from you. You saw different character flaws and different personalities as it came through. So that was multi-layered. Like, there was a lot of things, it seems, if we really break that down, that contributed to that. I would never want to, I will tell you, if I was madly in love with somebody and they moved, or I met somebody and I was madly in love with them, I would follow them. I would do the same thing because I have that romantic side and I believe in that. I would hope it would work out and I would try for it to work out, but that's going to depend on the quality of the person and if their true morals, characters, belief systems, and values align with you. Because if they do, y'all are going to make it work. Okay, distance is distance,
Correct.
and you'll find
Yeah.
a way to come together at the appropriate time. But I do believe that
He's not buying it,
don't wanna
Tiana.
go
He's
seek it
just
out.
not buying it.
Here's what's happened to me
Tell
since
me.
this experience, because I've not dated anybody since then. I've gone on a few dates with people, but nobody seriously. Is I've actually really learned to love living independently and living solo. And not having to think about like, oh, I'm a better person or I'm more complete or that person would be worth it if I had to do it. It's like, not really. I mean, I'm very content on my own and I'm open to dating people. There's a lot of reasons why I haven't gone down that road again, but I will go down that road again. And I just think like it's too much work. I just don't want to even go down this possibility if I travel and I meet somebody and they live in somewhere else that I'm going to entertain the idea of like maybe that one will work when I could.
But we're relational.
I live in Los
creatures.
Angeles. There's a
We're
million
not
people
supposed to live alone.
No, I disagree. I think that I have a dog and he's wonderful and I get companionship from my dog. I have a roommate who, I don't see that often, but there's definitely, a nice connection there. I have friends and family that I see pretty regularly and I love my life solo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all right.
I've done a ton of solo travel. It's great. And, I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
So that, to me, it's a very high hurdle to clear to even think about doing a long distance thing again.
I totally get that. And Ray, I love solo travel too for a lot of reasons, but Marnie, when I was single after a 15-year relationship, and Marnie really coached me and got me ready to have the relationship I have now. I say it all the time. I would not have the kind of relationship I did now if this one was not in my ear all the time. And what I did when I was single again is I kind of made this list that everybody makes. And Marnie broke it out for me. So I had like the deal breakers and the must-haves. Well, there's two other categories. There's wants and there's do not wants. So on my deal breaker category, I said, I'm not dating anybody with small children. I'm just not. Well, that turned out to be I do not want it, not a deal breaker, because I did, and here I am. And thank God I didn't overlook it, but trust me, it was a hurdle for me. So what I'm kind of hearing you saying with long distance relationships, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. It's definitely a do not want. And there would have to be a lot of other factors to
I think it's a deal breaker.
You think
I think it's a deal breaker. Yeah,
him?
look at his face. It's a deal breaker. Yeah, he's saying
Kind
yes.
of is, yeah.
Okay,
it's a deal breaker.
Good, because you get to choose that.
I live in Los Angeles,
Yeah,
right?
there's no shortage of people.
Gazillions of people here in the dating pool, right? So when I am ready to date, I think I will spend my time sort of wading through that pool and not. There's nowhere else except maybe Portland that I would love to meet somebody there potentially who could drag my ass to Portland, but I don't really even want that.
But Ray, I think you said it.
challenging.
I think when you said it yourself when you said when I'm ready, and I almost said I don't know that you're ready to even date somebody locally.
No,
you
I'm
sound
not.
like you're very happy right now. You're living very independently, and you're very fulfilled. You've got a lot of healthy social relationships and connections, and so God bless you.
Well, I definitely want to use both of you and hire you to create my list of do's and don'ts so that when I am ready, and maybe I'll be that challenge case of like, maybe you could convince me that you have a client on the East Coast that's worth a long distance dating experience and see if I would go for that or not at that time.
We would start local for you, sir. We would have a lot of fun running through the streets of LA and looking at, because you're right.
Please.
There are a lot of wonderful people there. It's not like you live in a village, in the corner of Nebraska with 4,000 people. That's a different story. You got to expand your horizons. But you live in one of the largest metropolitan cities in the country, in the world. And there's a lot of people who also would be in LA are open to moving to LA. And I think that's the plan for you. You are a person who is not interested in the living separately. You want to spend time with your person. And that's what would make sense for you. So.
And there's something to be said as well for like what I realized with Joe right away was that he was a Florida person. And I was a San Francisco person, and we clashed a lot about that. There's a lot of cultural differences. There's a lot of awareness of like people and like multicultural people. And, you know, he wasn't into any of that stuff. It was very much like, I just want to go to work. I want to have my drinks on the weekend. I want to go to the strip club, and I want to put my feet up and just like da-da-da-da and just be simple. And I didn't want any of that. So like just living geographically in different places, I think that's another thing for people to really think about is like, you know, what is it about the place that affects the person? And can that be worked out? Because I'm a city guy at the end of the day, and you know, he wasn't. And Fort Lauderdale still was a city, but it really
not really
so different.
No, it's a beach town.
Yeah. Every corner was filled with either a liquor store or a pawn shop, which tells you everything you need to know about Florida.
Yep.
That's an excellent point. And Marnie and I have talked about that too with long distance. And that's a podcast for another day. But we have a lot of people who date internationally too. And we talk about cultures. But Marnie and I were just saying this, that we have so many different cultures within the United States alone. You are absolutely right. The culture of Florida is very different than the culture of LA, very different than Boston, very different than Kansas City, very different than, I mean, it's, and so it doesn't mean that everybody that's there thinks the same, but it's what you know. So.
Yeah. And he hated the fact that, I mean, I was very uppity about it at the time. I mean, I hadn't had my big humility lesson of sobriety either, but I really looked down on the people there and the place. And he hated that I would do that. I mean, I was just, and I couldn't help it. I was just like, ew, this is gross. I want to get the fuck out of here. Where's the trees? Where's the mountains? Oh my God, you guys.
Where's some culture? Where's some
you had to go to
diverse
the movies
food
for culture.
Right.
Oh, it was so bad. And yeah, I just couldn't get it. I mean, I just knew, like, when you know that it's the only time I've ever lived outside of California, a bad idea. Huge mistake. So I'm a California boy, and you know I can make any place in California practically work, but not Florida. No, that cultural difference was really a big deal. So no, long distance relationships do not work. I know you guys are going to say they do.
You don't know that. We don't know. I come into every one of these sessions with a complete open mind. I really, really do, because again, I believe in a majority, right? Or what common knowledge is, but I believe that there's always outliers as well. So you never know.
What if
but
you
I
put
think
the introvert and extrovert label on it as well? Because I think they could work for introverts, but I'm an extrovert, and I really missed the times when we were not together. That was really hard. And then there's the whole sexual trust dynamic as well. And like, you know, what are you supposed to do on that front? And the gays, I think, have got it figured out. Where it's just like, yeah, do your thing, have your fun. But, you know, still, it was a little bit like, it was just too hard to navigate that.
It's a lot. There's a lot of variables going on there. Yeah. Too many.
That makes total sense. This is enlightening. Your experience makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much for sharing so many of the personal details and dynamics around it, because I think that also really attributed to your point of view, which is completely understandable based on not only your culture, your values, your personality type, your kind of character, where you were in that point of your life. Like there's a lot of things. And, you know, we just talked about this earlier too. Timing is everything too. I mean, really, timing is everything. And there's different places in our lives where we want and need different things. So that's it. So
and I would say that everybody in that situation should do the head and the heart test as well, because I was really led by my heart when my head was telling me, and that was the gut check thing too.
Good for you.
There were a number of friends, a number of people that were really trying to appeal to the head, and the heart just completely won over in that situation. And I guess at the end of the day, I don't regret, you know, the fact that I'm more of a heart-based person, but it came at quite a cost and quite a life lesson to be learned. And I really wish I'd been listening more to my head in that situation.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's tremendous
And
insight.
you were dickmatized on top of it.
Dickmatized,
so,
yeah.
Correct.
I mean, when
You've
you're
gotta
led with
factor
your
in that.
heart and your wanger danger, that's a
hard
whole
to
different
replace.
factor.
Yep.
Whole different factor.
Ray, it was wonderful having you here. It was so wonderful meeting you and hearing about your story. It was just wonderful. Thank you
I know
so
that
much.
we'll be talking again. There's a lot of other ways we could go with this. So today's podcast, we are discussing the myth, long distance relationships don't work. Ray, I know your verdict. Say it again for me, please.
I'd say 90% of the time they do not work. And if you're one of those 10%, good luck to you. Have at it.
Have
Not
at
for
it.
me.
Marnie, what's your conclusion?
I believe that long distance relationships can work with two equally willing participants.
Said like true Marnie. Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that for the most part, they do not work. And I believe that there are outliers as long as boundaries, goals, and a timeline are set. But I believe for the most part, they don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
But I would try it, but I would
Wonderful.
move my ass there immediately. So then it's no longer long distance. So that doesn't
I'm
really
sure you
apply.
guys are going to be besieged with listeners who will tell you their success stories as well. And
Good.
again,
We
more power
want to
to
hear
you.
that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
love success
God bless
stories.
them.
Yeah.
That's good.
Exactly.
I hope.
All right,
I
Ray,
do
we're
hope
excited
love is
for
love.
your podcast. Tell us the name of it again.
It's called Sobriety Sucks, but you need
Okay.
it. And it should be out, I would say, sometime in April. And looking forward to having you guys on as guests and continuing our conversations. This has been a lot of fun for me. And I think, we have a lot to talk about as well on the sobriety front and some of these other myths that we can bust on sobriety.
I'm in
We
all day, every
certainly
day.
are
Anything
excited.
recovery related, I'm in, sir. Yep.
Yeah,
She's
cool.
in.
Yeah.
Marnie, you want to tell them where they can find more of us?
Sure, you can find us at www.mymindfulmatch.com, or we're on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. My Mindful Match.
Thanks again, Ray.
I'm going to look you up. Thanks,
Okay.
ladies.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye.